Fantastic. And we are live. Welcome to Youth Rugby Discussion. This is a podcast that focuses on youth rugby union. One thing that I always want to make sure that everybody understands is though some of us may sit on different boards, different types of boards in the Northeast and elsewhere, we don't speak for any of those boards or any of those bodies while we're on stream. This is basically inviting you guys to join us in our virtual gathering to be able to discuss issues pertaining to that are interesting and are relating to youth rugby. Today we have, I'm very excited this episode. We've got a lot of folks on, and we also have a very interesting guest. A guest who you can find at ruggersedge.com. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to introduce everybody. You're going to be able to hear all the co-hosts, but I just want to make sure keep your eye out at the very end. Listen for Karen Donahue. She's going to introduce herself and tell us why she is here. But folks, from the top down, let's just go ahead and say hello. Say a tiny bit about yourself, just so that we can associate a voice to a name. Alan.
Hi, yeah. So this is Coach Alan. I coach with the Rentham Barbarians, and I've probably been associated with rugby since William Webb Ellis was first picking the ball up and running.
How do I follow up with that? Hey, my name is Chris Cuddy. I call myself Rugby Dad on this podcast, and it's starting to stick. I've got 3 kids in rugby, ages 9, 13, and 16. My days are gone, but I think it's relevant for this podcast. You all do not know that I played my college rugby at Oregon State University.
And you heard my voice at the top, Daniel Mejia. I'm trying to engineer this show, so you'll see me typing away vigorously, trying to keep up with everybody. So that's me.
Is that me? That's me. Can you hear me?
Yes, Daryl, go ahead.
Yes.
This is Daryl Jackson, USA Rugby Youth and Development Officer for the greater New England, New England area, mostly Boston.
Hi everyone, I'm Jessica Rosenstein. I played for Belmont and Boston for youth rugby, and now I play rugby at Lindenwood University.
Hi, this is. Is this me?
Yes, it is. Go, Karen. Sorry, go. Yep.
My name is Karen Fong Donahue. I am the owner and founder of the Ruggers Edge, and I'm sure we'll dive more into that a little bit. Thanks for having me.
Hey, this is Kate McCabe, and I currently coach at Belmont High School for the girls' side, but I've coached at Boston University and for Boston Women's Youth, so really excited about this week's show.
Hi, I'm Matt Pamela. My rugby journey started as a player at Marshfield High School. Then I went on and played at Boston University, helped start the South Shore Anchors men's rugby club that now has a women's side, old boys side, and a little bit of youth. We're trying to grow that. And I'm now currently the head coach at Marshfield High School, where I started my whole journey.
Hey, Shaggy, you're up.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you,
This is
Shaggy.
Shaggy from South Shore Sharks, president and coach. And I also played at Marshfield High School, so I'm on Matt's side.
My kids have played for the Sharks, so I'm on Shaggy's side.
I'm Skylar, a high school rugby player for the Boston Irish Wolfhounds.
Hey, this is Steve Cygnus, coach with the Rentham Barbarians and club president. Coaching the kindergarten through second grade group right now, and have 5 kids. They've all gone through youth rugby programs. Currently, one's in kindergarten and one's graduated college. So I've had them all sort of through the different ages.
You should be Rugby Dad, Steve.
All right, so we've got a lot of different people, a lot of different perspectives. Not everybody's going to talk at the same time, but at times we all are going to talk over each other, and that's absolutely fine. So, Karen, you've got a lot of people here listening, and some of us were blown away when we found out that you existed and that your efforts are out there in helping young players sort of find their pathway forward in rugby. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do, and definitely at some point we'll probably start hammering you to find out how did you find yourself in this role. I mean, this is just so cool.
Yeah, so I think like everyone on this, in this group, been a part of the rugby community for a long time, and it's always like, how do I tell the story without it going for hours and hours? But I think in a nutshell, I grew up in California, went to school at UC Davis, ended up picking up, rugby there and played at a fairly high level. I was a collegiate All-American there. I played on the US U23 women's team, and then played for another 5 years for a women's club in the Los Angeles area, where I was, kind of in the pool for 15s and for 7s national team. And then at the time, I, kind of made that decision I'm sure everyone hits that decision of, do I want to try to pursue the rugby piece, or do I pursue my career piece? And at that time, I chose to do the career side. And I ended up going back to school to get my master's in counseling. I wanted to be a school counselor. And so I did do that at Chapman University. I got my master's in counseling, and then got my school counseling credential, and started working in a school in San Diego. So this was, back in 2010, 2011. And I don't know if anyone remembers if they're from California or on the West Coast. But California is actually notoriously one of the worst funded kind of states for school counseling. So typically a recommendation for the ratio of students to counselors should be somewhere, the American School Counseling Association says like 400 to 1. California is around 1,000 to 1. So long story short, I was only really in a school for about a year before I was let go. And at that time, the only way for me to, kind of continue working with students and helping them through the process of college, which is the favorite part of when I was working in a high school, was working independently. So I would like to say that, this was like my passion from the beginning, but not really. I actually really enjoyed being in a high school. I liked being able to work with a really large variety of students, and students that, had different goals and different things they wanted to do. However, that just wasn't the way it was going to go for me, which is fine. Obviously, I think it's interesting to see where I've landed now. But to make a long story short, I ended up working for a few different independent educational consulting companies, and kind of learning the ropes, really spending a lot of time understanding, as much as I could. I'm a huge nerd about the college search process, the application piece, how do you find the right fit? I loved that part of it. So really, generally, the first few years, it had nothing to do with rugby. It was actually, I was working with many clients that had nothing to do with sports at all. It was just students that needed help with this process. And I'll sidebar this with, at the same time, I was coaching high school, I was refereeing high school, and that was when the refereeing part of my rugby career really took off. And so what was happening is, professionally, I was working with high school students. And then on weeknights and then weekends, I was refereeing. I was refereeing high school, I was refereeing college. And, it started becoming a thing. It started becoming a thing where at the very end of a game, like, I would approach one of the students and say, hey, the players, hey, like, you had a great game. Where are you going to college? And I had so many players say, I don't know. And I was like, well, wait, what year are you? I'm a 12th grader. Like, have you not thought about it? And they're like, well, I don't really know. Where could I go to play rugby? So this is in San Diego. And I was like, well, there's a team at San Diego State. There's a team at UC San Diego. There's a team at University of San Diego, right? And they would just look at me just with a blank face. I'm like, all right, just get where are your parents? Where are they in the stands? And I would just sit and talk with these, with these families and say, look, like, this kid has got to keep playing. He's great, or she's great. How do we keep this going? Because what I was finding was, it was less about students not having, the interest in continuing to play. It just, at that point, so I started the company in 2012. There was nothing. Like you would try to wade through this mess of American college rugby. And unless you were in it, if you are on the outside, you're a family that this is your first rugby kid, none of it makes any sense. So I was like, yeah. So I was like, well, I'll start writing some stuff down. And I basically, I was, kind of just writing, programs down for, certain families. I'm like, hey, look at this one, right? Like you're thinking about engineering, you're thinking about architecture, or you're thinking about these sorts of things. These are the programs I would recommend. And basically it just kind of morphed into this thing where, I had so many people in the beginning say, can you really have a college counseling company that only talks about rugby? And I was like, I don't know, but I'll try, we'll see what happens. And, here we are, in 2020 and it's still going, it's going great. And I don't think I have to explain as much as I used to about the fact that there are opportunities. There are teams. I mean, in the beginning, it was just a lot of just convincing people that, that there's hundreds of rugby teams out there, right? And, I would just get the answer like, really? Like, I had no idea. So I mean, I said that was in a nutshell. It wasn't really a nutshell, but that was kind of where this all started.
So you were, this is really cool. I mean, talk about, kismet or whatever. You weren't planning on doing this. You were just you had your own career path, and you also were a rugby player. And almost like everybody, everybody should after a game go up to the referee and chat the referee, ask some questions, any questions that they have, and just in general, part of the camaraderie of rugby is you go shake the referee's hand and chat him up a little bit. But that started to morph into you sort of identifying or seeing some of these players and saying, hey, it'd be a pity to lose you. Where are you going to play rugby in the future? And kids just had this, they were giving you this look of, wait, rugby in the future? There's rugby after high school? There's life after high school? How 18-year-olds just have the whole universe already figured out, right? So that's amazing. It just organically grew out of what you were already doing. Is that was the case, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously as a referee, I mean, this is such an interesting thing, but, I mean, you have the best seat in the house, right?
Yeah.
Like you're in that game for, 60 minutes for high school players. And you get to see, not only obviously the athletes, but you also sometimes there are just students that I was like, what great character, like what a great leader, what a great captain. This is the type of person you want to keep in this rugby community as long as possible, and whether that is, and everyone's been on those teams, like you have those players that are just, they're not going to be the star. They're not going to be, a pro player in the future, but they are the glue that holds that team together. Like all of those college teams, all those club teams in the future, you need those folks that love the team, love the program. And they are the folks that will get up at 6 a.m. and line the fields for you, like you need those people. So I think just encouraging these young people to say, look, like I absolutely believe that you can play in college and you should. And I'll also have a caveat here. When I was saying that I was doing high school on the weekdays, I was also refereeing college on the weekends. So I think that also gave me a different perspective of, a lot of the work I do now is helping families understand where is going to be a good fit for their child. Because there's certainly a difference of, a super fun social club team that is a great fit for certain players, right? And then there's also those super high performance varsity level teams like Jess, who's on, she's at Lindenwood, that's a great fit for a certain type of player who's looking for that experience. And being able to, again, I was lucky enough to referee in a bunch of national championships for, collegiate programs. So being able to really speak knowledgeably about, look, this is what a women's Division II national championship looks like. This is the level of that, of that game. And then also do men's, like I was doing men's collegiate as well. So saying, look, this is what, a Bowling Green University, a D1 AA program playing Stanford, this is what that level is. That's very different than, say, a step on a field with BYU and San Diego State, which I've also done, right? And so like, I just being able to know the differences between those divisions, and then being able to then look at a kid and go, look, like, I think if you're looking at that program, you're probably going to sit the bench for a year or two, and that's fine, but you need to know that. Is that the program you want? Versus maybe you're actually looking for a lower division program where you're going to make an impact right away, and helping them understand, like, how is that going to be a good fit for them?
Absolutely. And you know what? I totally want to call that out, and I just want to shine the light on it, because I'll be honest, when I first heard about what you do and ruggersedge.com, it blew my mind, and I thought, okay, great. Somebody is doing that. That is fantastic. Somebody should be doing that. Somebody should have been doing it all along. And I understood it from the perspective of the mega athlete or fantastic rugby player, and being able to give them the opportunity, the pathway to just launch, themselves, through rugby. But I think you made a really fantastic point, because that first part, I get that. I understood. When somebody mentioned you existed, I thought, fantastic. I get it. But I think the subtlety there that you just really you pointed out is, sometimes, or you're also very aware of, where that player wants to play rugby. They don't all want to play at the absolute highest level. They need to be able to identify Division 2, Division 3, what's going to push their rugby, or what's going to feed their soul in being able to play a fun fun fixture that fits their ability, their capability, and kind of what they want to do. So, I commend you for making that point, because, folks, I'll be honest. Like, I played rugby in high school. When I left high school and then I went to college, it was I didn't realize that there was rugby in college. I'd heard there was rugby in college. I didn't realize there was rugby in college, and I just walked on, and I had no idea what that team was going to be like. And hearing you say that, hey, you also have the insight to be able to look at a player and be like, hey, you know what? You're doing this as an enrichment thing. It looks like you're doing this as a way of being able to sort of fulfill, the rest of your character, of who you are. You're doing it for fun. You want to look at this and this and this and this school, this for the academics, but you know what? These are really great fits for what you do with rugby. Now, did I read too much into it, or Karen, is that literally what you mentioned a little while ago?
No. I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I think what you all will probably notice, there are lots of agencies that are out there. I get questioned about them quite often. I get families, probably more international families than anything, but there's lots of companies out there that I think sell collegiate rugby in the US as if it's American football, which it isn't, right? All of us who've been in it understand that's not what it is. Like, scholarship's always that really big elephant in the room. And what I really tell families all the time is, my goal here, like, my philosophy is not, like, I'm not a placement agency, like, I'm not going to place you anywhere. If you end up somewhere, it's because your child did a lot of work. Your child worked really hard in school. They still had to go through all the same process that they would if they weren't an athlete. But the way I look at students is, it has to be with a holistic review of their entire profile. I'm not, I get those emails all the time, like, oh, I've got this student, he's going to be the next, best thing, right? Like, he's this big, he's this fast, he's this whatever. My next question is, well, what's his GPA? Has he taken any tests? What does he want to study? What kind of school is he looking for? Because it doesn't do any of us any good to help kind of, quote, place someone somewhere where they're not going to survive. They're not going to enjoy themselves. Like, they leave after a quarter and they're back at home in their parents' basement, like that doesn't do well for my business model, right? I need happy families. I need students to go somewhere where they enjoy themselves, and they graduate and they get a job afterwards, So I really work hard to make sure families understand, like, if scholarship is a goal, like, we'll work on that, but we're also going to look at this, from a perspective of, they're going to college. So it also has to make sure that it's a good fit. So a good example, and that I bring up all the time is, for example, like Life University, right? Everyone is aware of Life, and Jess is probably cringing, because I know Life and Lindenwood see each other quite a bit. But Lindenwood is, Life is not a great fit for students that have particular academic goals in mind, right? So if I have a student that says, my entire life, I have always wanted to be an architect, I am not going to recommend going to Life University. There's no program there that's going to prepare them for architecture. And their coaches would agree with me, right? And the good thing is I've built up a good relationship with these college coaches as well. Like, they know if I'm recommending a student to them, there's been a lot of discussion to make sure it's a fit. Because at the end of the day too, like, I don't want my students wasting coaches' time, and sending mass emails to like 50 coaches. And at the end of the day, it's like, actually, I've never wanted to go to school in the South. Well, did you look at where the school is, So there's a lot of work that goes into making sure that students find their best fit, for their goals, for their futures, to make sure they're happy and they enjoy themselves.
I gotta tell you, I love hearing that, because I think, those players, not the ones who are going to be super elite professionals, the other players, the guys and girls who play because they love it, that's the strength of the sport. The more of those players we have, the stronger rugby is in this country, the more TV exposure we'll get. Super important. And I mean, like, 99% of my kids are those players, maybe 100%.
Yeah, and they can take over this podcast someday, Matt. 20 years, we'll be listening to them. Hey, Karen, one thing yeah. One thing that was interesting that you're saying, and never really dawned on me though, is that how you seem to be connected to the players' rugby playing ability, and you're able to help place them there. And that's interesting, seeing as that you're out west, and let's just say we have Jess on this call right now, that she played rugby in the Metro Boston area, and you were able to make sure that she's playing at a university where it's the right one for her. How could you help us understand how you might go about gauging a rugby player's skill level and rugby desire, and factoring that into your choices for placement?
Yeah, I mean, and I wonder if Jess might want to kind of pop in and explain her, kind of her thoughts here too. But I mean, to be really honest, I think for a lot of players, normally what I end up doing for them is, number one, having students do a lot of self-reflection on where they think, like where they project themselves, right? So to be really, most student athletes know, right, in their minds. And if they don't know, one of the things I recommend is I'll say, okay, here's 3 different tiers of rugby. Y'all are very lucky. You have lots of YouTube videos online. Hey, look at this national championship game between Life and Lindenwood, and then go ahead and watch a NYRA D3 match between, Bowdoin and Castleton, and then go ahead and watch a club D1 game between, UC Davis and University of Virginia, right? I think just students watching those, they end up, and I'll ask them, can you picture yourself competing for a spot on that team? Can you honestly think you could beat out that girl or that guy, right? And same on the boys' side, right? I might tell them, hey, go ahead and watch that D1A national championship game between Life and Cal Berkeley, and then go ahead and watch that D1 AA match, and then go ahead and watch that NSCRO match, and reflect on, whether or not you think, that's the level you want to play, and that's the level you want to try to compete at. And most of the time, honestly, like they get it. I mean, I've had some students too, and a lot of it is like based on your area. If you're already playing for a really high performance high school program, they might look at some of those club programs and go, I think my high school team could beat them. And I'm like, okay, fair. And so they already can kind of assess, right, where they think they'll be. And then from my perspective, a lot of, if I'm working with a student, as much as possible, I do want to see film, if I can get it, and just watching them. I mean, you all have seen players too, right? There are those that you're like, this is a kid that needs to go to that program. They're that good. But the vast majority are just, it's not that they're not a standout, they're just not a standout yet. And most of it is they just haven't had enough time. They're picking up rugby so late. Standout players, a lot of times, like, if I've ever had a player, oh my gosh, like that student needs to be playing at that highest level possible. They've already been ID'd. They've already been playing for like high school Americans. They've been doing Atlantis or whatever, right? They've already been playing at those higher levels. So it's usually a little bit easier to recommend those.
Yeah, good point.
So Karen, I think I heard you say that in tying into Chris's question, I think I heard you say if I have video. So let's say I'm a parent and I'm very interested in let's say I'm two different families, parents. They heard about you and they're like, you know what? I think we need to go to Karen. I think we need her help. One family has an ultra athlete that needs to get on the Olympic track as soon as possible, and another one is on track to have a great life that is just really well balanced, and everything that they do, including having a really fun, college club experience. So, as a parent, what do I need to have ready? I heard film. What are the things that I should have, be able to answer to give you all the tools you need to find either the ultra athlete, the perfect path for them, and then also the non ultra athlete, to just find them a great college career where their degree and their college experience are gonna carry them for the rest of their life.
Okay, so you guys are just giving me easy questions. No kidding. So I think for both, I think for the ultra athlete, for the non-ultra athlete, however we're going to look at this, the main things that I need honestly have nothing to do with rugby. Like when I meet with families, and I would say most families come to me right before the junior year. That's typically when families really start feeling the pressure and start thinking about, okay, we've got college, we've got recruitment, if that's in play, because the bulk of that is going to happen your junior year. However, I have started having more families start coming earlier. They could start coming as early as 9th grade and 10th grade. Now, it's not, I've never been like, you have to do it that way. I think the only reason families might start earlier is more just to give your family more room, right? More room to breathe, more room to accomplish certain things, that, if you're contacting me August of your senior year, there's less time to fix things, or there's less time to make changes to course selections, things like that, right? So I think from a planning perspective, families, I would say if they're thinking about it, the earlier, sometimes it's better, right? For most things, it just gives you a little more runway to kind of plan things out. So without actually film, so some families have nothing, right? But ideally, in order to kind of start what you're talking about, it sounds like, is a lot of families do come to me asking for a target list, right? They're like, look, there's 600 programs that are out there. How do we whittle this down? How do we find the right fit, for my son or daughter that's going to be, good for them for what they want to accomplish? And actually, typically in the beginning, I'm asking for general college planning basics, which is, what is their cumulative GPA? I can't tell you how many families don't know this, or, students, right? They'll say, oh, well, last semester I got a 4.0. But what they're not taking into account is the 2 semesters before that, they had a 3.0. And what we're looking at is a cumulative GPA from grade 9 through grade 11. So GPA is really helpful, kind of getting a sense of if they've ever taken any standardized tests, PSATs, practice ACTs, things like that. That's helpful. And then also really making sure that students have a good sense of what they're looking for in college. And this is like literally, again, rugby is not a part of this. The main things that normally, if a student doesn't have a good fit, they haven't done their homework on the front end. So that means they haven't thought about location, they haven't thought about the size of the college, they haven't thought about a future major, and they haven't thought about their budget or the finances, how they're going to pay for it. So if they come to me without having thought about any of those things, it's okay, but those we'll probably spend a lot of time discussing those. Other things that they can start thinking about, putting together a rugby resume is very helpful. You can find a template on my website. So if you Googled Rugger's Edge rugby resume, that's really helpful. And then obviously as much film as possible. More coaches, if you asked me this question in 2013, the idea of high school players having film for rugby was just like crazy. It's like, well, maybe mom or dad had some shots on a phone, where now it's becoming more common that teams will have like a pretty nice setup. They'll actually stream games, or they'll film live full games. Those can be really, really helpful. Obviously, not only for me to make assessments, but obviously for coaches as well.
So Karen, let me just pause you for like a half second there. I love this list that you're giving us. Let me punt it to the coaches here, the high school coaches. I'm not trying to put anybody in a bad place. But do you guys do you film your games? Do you have somebody that shows up with a ladder and straddles over it and just shoots down and records the entire game? How common is that in high school games?
I think in Marshfield, so I took over as head coach in 2003, and that was one of my very first things is we need to film all our games. And for a pretty good stretch, we did a good job and filmed almost all of our games. I've been starting to upload them to YouTube, the really old ones. Then our school has a telecom program, a TV studio and all that stuff, and they started taking over and started missing some games here and there. And then about, maybe 6 years ago, our school got a Huddle account, and now we film more. And I'm working with the football coach to get not just your standard sideline view, but also an end zone. In football, what they call an all 11, but I'm starting to call an all 15 view, where you can start seeing better alignments and formations. I feel like most of the Massachusetts rugby teams that play in the MIAA use video. They film a lot. They use it a lot. A lot of them will commit one practice day a week is just a video day.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd like to contrast that actually as a coach of high school aged kids playing club rugby. We're almost completely the opposite. It's as if video was never even invented. We're happy to get the occasional photograph. So it's fascinating with rugby just becoming MIAA and just going into the high schools here that, again, clubs are a long way behind, I think, the facilities available at high schools. And so at least one of my parents has come to me recently and say, hey, we've been looking into colleges and they asked for video. Do you have any? It's like, no, I've been coaching. I haven't had a chance to think about it. So it's news and it's a challenge.
I'll tell you, I've had that experience too. I actually was the head coach for my men's rugby club for a while, and the same thing with them. I said, we got to do video. And they looked at me like I had three heads. They're like, why would we want to do that? I'm like, as a retired player, let me tell you, you want some video. And and they've also been sporadic doing it. But I think, across the board, it's only going to help the sport grow.
Oh, that's
yeah.
great.
So obviously, come the March Vegas Sevens again, Matt. I'm assuming you'll be there with the video camera recording all our games for us.
And I'll say from my perspective, we do videotape every game, and like our team videotapes it for ourselves, but we also live stream all our home games. Or not us, the town does, which is obviously much better quality than what we're doing on the sidelines. Jess, when you were doing this, did you have video footage from perhaps the Belmont Media Center to use? Because we weren't videotaping at Belmont when you were going through applications.
Yeah, I actually did, but I don't know if it was through the Belmont Media Center. But we had game footage probably from like your personal camera from back then.
Oh.
But I did. I had about 2 to 3 years of video footage when I applied. But I think it's also really important early on to make yourself more scoutable in person. Hopefully, if you can work out with a coach, see you play in person, that's also helpful if you don't have that type of footage, right?
Yeah, I'll
yeah,
tell you the Sharks. So I saw the value in video about a year ago, and I was trying to get on board with a media production company whose whole business model was to to film the games and put them on local access television and whatever, sell a couple spot ads, which was just brilliant. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, so we're still trying to get the proper model going, because as a super poor youth club team, it's just we can't afford the equipment, we don't have the manpower to do it. But ideally we build that we build that relationship with someone else who can benefit from it, and because film helps everyone.
So,
Jess, while you're still, while you're still off when you're on the line, it was interesting. When I'm looking at the Ruggers Edge website and I follow on Karen, doing her webinars and that sort of thing, she probably says, all the time, it's really all about the education, the college admissions process, the academics part. The rugby seems to work itself out, and that's interesting. Jess, when in your experience, was it like how much of the conversations that you have were about rugby, and versus how much were about test prep and college selection and academics and that sort of thing?
Well, the primary concern is usually in order to get into a college, you need to focus on your academics first, but rugby helps narrow it down, or at least condense your options. But I definitely wanted a program that would challenge me rugby-wise, but I was predetermined as a chemistry major going in, so that was also a big concern. But I think we needed, during the time with applications, Karen and I kind of looked at which schools matched a good balance. But it happened to be that Lindenwood was the best option for me to play at the level that I had, that I wanted to motivate myself to be, but also at the same time get the education that I was looking for. So I think we started mainly out with academics and making sure that I could present my best version of myself to get the options that I had originally wanted. If that's a good answer.
Yeah, great.
So
And I
this,
would say,
that's what I expected you to say.
I would just say that intriguingly, as a coach looking at Jess going through the college process, of all of my years, she is the only person who, after 1 year of playing rugby, was like, I want to be on the national team. I want to play so much rugby that everyone in the world is sick of me. And nobody else had that kind of drive. And so that's a very different college experience than the vast majority of my high school players.
So let me do this. Let me bring it back a little bit, because there's going to be at some point there's going to be parents that are maybe listening to this, and we have a lot of inside jokes. So can somebody define for me what the inside joke is of Lindenwood? What I mean, and I'm saying inside joke, but I don't really mean inside joke. Can somebody explain to me how bad Lindenwood is at rugby? Right. I mean, I voiced it that way because somebody's listening to this and they don't know Lindenwood. They may not know it for a school. They may not know what the school is good at, and they probably absolutely have no idea at what level Lindenwood is at rugby. So can somebody just give me a quick little? I'll do it, but it's somebody that knows Lindenwood or knows collegiate rugby. Tell me what kind of players go to Lindenwood and come out of Lindenwood.
Sounds like a question for Jess.
Yeah. Well, Lindenwood is a D1 elite university in rugby, both for females, but the men also play for D1 AA, right? Or D1A, the top for men. But we've the women have, I think we've been 15s and 7s national champions for about the past 2 or 3 years, and the men's have been 7s national champions for about 2 years, I think. But if you're looking for the top of the top programs, right, Lindenwood is a pretty intense one, but it's definitely worth the challenge. It's going to push you, but I think it gives you the best opportunity to grow as a rugby player in all ways.
And that's what I meant by kind of like
Yeah.
slowing down. Jess, thank you, fantastic. I really appreciate that. And that's what I meant by like inside joke. What I meant by
Yeah.
that is, hey guys, can we folks, can we comrades, can we define what we mean by Lindenwood? So, Jess, you were talking about your experience and you said, hey, I was really interested in going to a school that was strong in chemistry. So you were focusing on the academics part of it.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
what really kind of like shines the light into what Karen can do here is not only was it staying true to your passion into what it is that academically you were trying to do, but I think the little inside joke that I think needed to be defined for somebody that didn't know what Lindenwood is Lindenwood is a really, really, really good rugby school. A program, a really good rugby program. So I love the fact that you were talking about the fact that you were focusing on chemistry. And by the way, folks, she was actually going to like the arguably, there's once you get to that level, it doesn't matter who's one, two, three, four, or five. They're all the best, right? And that is just so. Jess, I'm in awe that you're here and that you're talking to us. I love that the
Oh,
fact that
thank
you're
you.
here, and I love the fact that Karen was able to like to guide you into something that as a human being, as an individual, was going to fulfill you and also happen to be an incredibly good rugby school. I mean, I couldn't let that
Yeah.
pass, guys. I think a lot of people, so hopefully people are going to be listening to this and maybe they don't know what we mean by Lindenwood. So that's intense. That is heavy. Chris, does that make sense, right? I think that's the inside joke I was talking about.
Yeah, well, that's your that's the one. Yeah, that's the insider information. Good for everybody to know what that is. And if and if they wanted to know more schools, they could ask Karen or others that are in that top tier as well. Hey, in the interest of time, I'm not sure how much time we're gonna have with Karen. I did have like a couple sort of fun questions, but Karen, is there something else? Is there another topic that you wanted to broach, or do you want to field questions? Because as usual, time is just flying, and I don't want to
Well,
keep everybody away from their
I,
commitments.
yeah, no, I mean, I did want to touch on something. I think Kate's the one who mentioned that Jess was very clear and was one of the rare, athletes she had that said, like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to play at the highest level. This is what this is where I envision myself, right? Like, and even Jess said, I want to be challenged, right? Like, I want to work really hard. And I think what's interesting is often I see, I get a lot of players where they're like, that's what I want, right? I always have a quote at the end of my, like my little signature or whatever in my email. But it's like, there's a lot of students that say, this is what I want. I want to play at the highest level I can. I want to do all these things. And they don't really consider how much work actually goes into that national championship run, right? I'm sure Jess can talk about it. It's like, not only is it balancing all the strength and conditioning workouts, all the meetings, all of the practices, all of the travel, along with getting her chemistry degree, right? Like, it takes a very special person to want to do that and put in the hard work. And I think one of the questions I often get when family comes to me in the beginning is, and something I'm looking for in the initial, I always do like an introductory call with families. So if they're thinking about working with me, I'm like, we got to have a call first, because if I notice that it's mom and dad talking the whole time and the student has said nothing, it's probably not going to be a good fit, right? Because at the end of the day, it's that student who's going to be the one engaging with coaches, emailing them, talking to them on the phone if they ever talk on the phone, meeting them at tournaments. That all has to come from the student. So, I mean, I've definitely heard some horror stories of families that go on visits and, they're walking around doing a tour of the campus and it's mom and dad in front asking all the questions. oh yeah, my son would love to play here. He's the best. Like he could make such an impact here. And then Johnny's hovering around in the back, not saying a word. And really at that point, the parents have killed the deal. So I really really urge families, if they're thinking about like, does my child really want to go to the next level and play at whatever level they the student has to be the one driving the bus. And if they're not, I tell them, like, save your money, right? You can absolutely apply to many colleges and just walk onto a team. You don't have to go through this whole like process of what Jess did, which is like talking to coaches and interviewing and making sure sending film. Like, you know what, you don't need film if you're going to go. You mentioned Oregon State, right? Great school, great rugby, super fun. Like, you want to go play there, apply, walk on, fantastic. There's no reason you need to send them film. And 90% of the programs out there, it's going to be like that. So it's a very small percentage of programs that you're going to need to go through lots of the actual recruiting process. So there's about 20 for the men and the women. So that's not very many, right? Like there's not that many where the process is similar to what you'd go through for soccer and volleyball and those sorts of things. So outside of those 20 to 25 programs, all we're looking at that point is, how do we make sure that the fit is good? Make sure you apply and present yourself in the best way possible, get yourself admitted, and then you just walk onto the team. Yeah, so I don't know if that helps clarify anything, but definitely student athlete has to be the one driving the bus.
Karen, can I ask you to share with people, I don't know if it's on your webinar, but you definitely did a talk at some point at the beginning of the pandemic. A couple of my kids went to it and I had a Zoom afterwards, and one of the parents was saying that you had a broken leg rule, and it was the most impactful statement that you made. And I loved it.
I heard that. Yeah, please share that. That's so cool.
Yeah. So by the way, I'm 100% positive I did not come up with this, so I've stolen it from somebody. But basically, with any sport, so because I work with, obviously I work with rugby athletes as a primary, but over the years, there's lots of crossover with students that play football that are dual athletes. They're trying to do recruitment as well. So the rule I'm talking about applies to anything. But what I'll tell them is, once you've got your list put together, or you're thinking about, these 10 colleges, I'll ask them, is this a college you would still want to go to if you broke your leg the first week of college? Right. And most family, if I'm doing this live, if I'm in a presentation with families, I'll actually ask the students, have you ever had a pretty big injury, or do you know someone that's had an injury? And in rugby, everyone's hands goes up, right? And the parents' hands goes up as well. So you're like, okay, look, would you want to be at that school if you couldn't play? And if they don't, then that's something they really need to think about. When I've had students that come back to me to transfer, they'll say, you know what, I didn't think about the fact that this, this school is on the other side of the country, and I never go home, and I'm too homesick, and I miss my family and my sisters and grandparents, and hey, I probably should have thought about that before, and now we're going to go the difficult process of transferring. So ideally, they're thinking about that on the front end, right? So like I said, like, you want to do as much preparation as you can, while you're in high school. And I'll also point this out too. Often I'll bring up, college is typically the second biggest financial purchase a family makes outside of buying a home. But for some reason, it ends up, students are a part of the process, right? They have to be, like I just said. However, they also need to be aware, and the family as a group need to understand, like, what the financial impact this is going to make on a family. I have had families which will say, yeah, we're going to let him apply, but he's probably not going to get in, but because we probably can't afford it anyway. And lo and behold, he gets into that college, and now we have this terrible conversation of, how do we tell him he can't go? And I had that happen twice last year.
Ouch.
And I have that conversation now, right? Like, understand, look, this college list you're looking at, it's great. If you get into these this is what's going to happen. You'll have to take out a loan. You'll have to, we will pay for freshman year, but you'll have to pay for sophomore and junior. I mean, have a plan, right? Because that, no parent, and I can already, you know, I have a 5-year-old, so I've got a ways to go before, you know, she goes to college, but I don't want to have to do that. That's horrible. So the financial piece is really big, you know, is understanding like, what are our parameters? You know, when we start looking at colleges, what are our limitations? And let's be honest about it. Let's be realistic. And I think some families really don't, they're like, if I don't talk about it, maybe we don't have to deal with it. You're going to deal with it, you know, when you see that bill. So much better to have those conversations, those hard conversations early rather than later.
Wow.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's a lot of reality there. That's amazing. Wow. All right, folks. So we are running long, and we tend to do this. So go ahead and fire any last questions we have for Karen. She's been absolutely fantastic. I have a couple in my pocket here, but anybody have any questions for Karen? Matt, you holding up your hand?
Questions. So my program, I probably have like 36 of my alumni playing college rugby right now, something in that neighborhood, maybe a little bit more. But what has always struck me as interesting is every couple of years, one of my best players just won't. They don't think they're good enough. You know, I don't know what the motivation is. And I always tell them, like, look, college rugby was like some of the most fun I've ever had. You're good. You got to do it. It's so much fun. I was wondering, do you ever do presentations to teams about what you do and the opportunities that are out there? I think you know, them hearing this sort of stuff from you, a professional who like specifically does this, would mean so much to them. I know my kids, I tell them all the time, and you know, in March when the college students are home on break and they come to practice once in a while, I'm like, hey guys, tell the kids how awesome college rugby is. But then the other problem I end up having too is like I have some like really great players that end up going to schools with really subpar social type teams, because I just don't know enough about the college. What schools are, I know which schools in my area are great, but you know, some of them don't have the majors they want and things like that.
Yeah, so I'll answer two things. Absolutely, I do you know, at this point, you know, webinars for teams or groups, or you know entire, like you know, like Rugby New Jersey is a common, like every year in January I do for them, like that's just something we do, or I've done something for the Potomac area, things like that. So 100%, if you have a team and you want to do that, just email me, Karen@ruggersedge.com. We just get a date and time, and then you know, you either do a webinar or we actually just do like a big Zoom meeting basically, and then I can present, and we can make it as formal or as informal as you want, where families can just ask questions. And you know, you know, I think anytime I'm able to, you know, at the heart of what I do, right? I'm an educator. Like I want to educate families so they know the options. Now, if the kids end up not playing in college, that's fine. But what I don't want them to do is not play because they just didn't know. I mean, like I'll tell you one really quick story. Here in Colorado, I happened to be reffing a high school game, and there was the captain. He was, you know, great kid, and I said, hey, like I've seen him a couple of games. I said, hey, where are you going off to college? Because this is already the spring. And he's like, oh, you know, I'm going to go to CU Boulder up the road. I said, oh, that's great. Are you going to play? Like, have you reached out to the coach and let him know you've already been accepted, you're going? And he's like, no, like, should I? And I was like, yeah, like, you know, here's his email address, email him, let him know that you're coming, so that, you know, if they're doing preseason, if they're doing summer, and how great is that you get to go to college and you have built-in family already. And he's playing for the college now, you know, and I'm not saying that he wouldn't have already, but it just wasn't a thought for him to make that connection, you know, because it's a club team, or he didn't know. And just to encourage them, again, like the drop off, and I don't have the numbers, but as you all probably know, youth rugby is the growth, right? There's way more youth in high school growing, then it drops off to college. People pick it up in college or whatever, and then there's another drop to club. and obviously we want to do as much as we can to just continue to keep people involved.
Yeah.
Karen, I'm just gonna.
And I might have missed your second question. Sorry.
Covered it. I think it was great.
One thing that I wanted to ask was, as you're talking to a whole bunch of coaches, what are you wishing that coaches would do at the outset of this process? Like, do you wish we would talk to kids younger? Do you wish we could support them in a different way? What kinds of conversations do you wish we would be having with our players? Like, what do you think? Where do you think coaches can support or define this?
Yeah. I think a couple of things. I think if, for example, if you're coaching players that are maybe first generation or underserved populations, where their families are not college savvy, I think just having coaches talk about college. So exactly how Coach, you were just talking about, hey, when I went to college, that was the best time of my life, right? I made the best friends. Like, this is what we did. And we traveled and we did like, just making it sound like fun, because I think a lot of young people also, when they're in high school, the idea of like going to school for 4 more years sounds terrible. Like, they're like, why would I don't want to talk about this. But the more you can engage them and say, look, like, hey, when I was in college, this was really, really fun. And college, I got to take this super cool class. It was about the history of chocolate, or like whatever it is. But encourage students to think about college not as like 4 more years of, this grind of high school. Because I think for a lot of them, high school is really hard. It's not enjoyable. Where college is, you get to find the things that you're passionate about and take classes and things that you care about and what you're going to be, in the future. So I think being able to talk about that. So that's like, especially more for coaches that might work with more families that they're probably not hearing it at home. Obviously,
Yeah,
really
that's
talking
insightful.
about the academic piece. Oh, thank you. I think, as much as possible, I've had some teams, if it's not a high school team, I see it more with club, because high school usually already has some sort of a minimum academic bar you have to hit, like you have to be eligible to play high school. If it's a club, sometimes it's a free for all, right? It's like, okay, sure. Like, you're paying to play and you're going to play. I think if there's a way to instigate some sort of look, like, we also are going to hold you to some sort of eligibility, or if we hear from your parents, you're skipping school, like, you're not playing on Saturday. Like, there has to be some tie, the athletic side to the academics, and hopefully that carries over even if they don't go to college, right? That there is value in education. There's value in those things. And the last thing that I was going to mention, I hope this is not a huge hot take here. I would really encourage high school coaches to allow players to try different positions. I can't tell you how many high school players in probably the last 3 to 4 years, 100% set on one position, and they have either never tried another position or are adamant they will not go to another position. And I think that just decreases their value when they go to college, right? Especially if they're going to go to a higher level. It is rare that what they're playing in high school is 100% what they're going to play in college. So I think, having some of those not free for all, but having those games, like if it's not, you guys are up by 80 points, like, hey, like, that Johnny has always wanted to try fullback. Like, are you risking maybe losing some points? Maybe, but letting that player try different positions, I think it's a great value for them, and also building more confidence for when they go to college. And, like, hey, we already have 2 fly halves, like, we don't need another one. Oh, great. Well, I've also played fullback. Cool. Like, we're going to put you there. So just being flexible. I know a lot of coaches tend to really like, oh my God, like, we have to win this game. And Johnny is best at fly half. But maybe allowing other people to step into that spot and letting him try something else, letting him try being a forward, like, even if it's a complete mess, I don't know, that would be one thing I always think would be really cool to bring into our culture a little bit more in high school.
Karen, you're blowing my mind right now. Like, okay, the whole topic of getting players to play other roles, I totally get that. But the academic aspect of it and the responsibility of the coaches, probably not so much the MIAA because it's built into high school, but Coach Allen, Steve, us that have a club side. Bringing up the conversation over and over again of where are you going to college as a way to be able to promote the concept of going to college, which has been proven to be the most valuable money you can spend. Is it's diminishing, and it's getting a lot more expensive, but it has been proven over and over again in many economic models. The best money you can spend is on yourself and going to college and getting a college degree. Um, that just blows my mind. And then on the club side, where it's not tied to a school, basically saying, "Hey, how are your grades? You're not playing if if you've been skipping school." I mean, I don't know how that's built into the club side. And again, I'm not going to put Steve and myself and Alan in a pinch in talking into that. But I think, Karen, I think that is that is a perspective that I think on the club side I'm not sure we think about that very very much. And oh my God, you're blowing my mind. Thank you so much. Sorry.
You're welcome.
All right.
I probably have time for like one more question if you want, and then I'll probably have to slip out.
All right. Anybody got a question? Okay, I'm gonna fire off with one because I'm being such a fanboy right now, and
I
I'm
was
gonna
going to
go.
say, no, I've got one, Daniel. I was too slow off the
Please
mark.
go, Alan, go.
What's the question we didn't ask you, Karen, that we should have asked you that we're just too ignorant to know
Great
better?
question.
Oh, come
It's a
on.
cop out, but it's a great
Well,
question.
you may be sensing I wasn't really educated in this area of the world, and I really have no idea what American college is like.
True. Good point. Good point. Karen, what did we miss?
What did we miss? Well, okay. If there's one last thing that I'll say, obviously my company and my job focuses a lot on college, right? That's what we're talking about. However, I will point out that I also want to stress I don't necessarily think. I mean, after what you just said, right? Like there's a huge return on investment going to college for a lot of students. That's going to be they're going to need a college degree to do what they want. However, there have definitely been students where college is not the fit for them, and do I want to lose those players because they're not going to go to a 4-year college? Absolutely not. And I think slowly, something I think has been growing, and I think it's been great, are seeing these junior college programs popping up, right? So Santa Barbara Rugby Academy has been around for a long time. Obviously, Iowa Central is a varsity level junior college program as well. I know Legacy Rugby Academy, which is in Michigan. Like, there's just more of these programs. And I think there are some students that, again, are they not 4-year college ready? Maybe just not yet. And for them to just say, or I don't know, maybe they had a really rough high school, like program. I don't want to dismiss any of them and say, which happens a lot in high school. I've been in a high school, right? Some of those counselors will end up looking at a student like that and say, oh, well, you're definitely not college ready. So we're just going to track you for graduation and that's it. Good luck. Where I think, if you were to come across a student like that, it's fine. They're not college ready. That's a traditional path of going high school straight into a 4-year college. But hey, maybe they actually are not mature enough. Maybe they're not ready. A 2-year program might be a great fit. There was a student, I talked to Jake Mizell, who's at Iowa Central. They have a student coming in. Their goal is to, be a welder, and there's a welding program there. It does not make sense for him to go to UC Berkeley to be a welder, or to be a fireman, right? So that's a great program. He's going to go there. He's going to get his AA. He'll play top level rugby. At that point, if he chooses to transfer on to a 2-year, after his 2-year to go to a 4-year, he can also do that. And now you've got players that you're not losing in that weird, like, they're kind of, they may be too young really to play for a men's club. You don't want them to quit, and what else can they do? So I think seeing more of these junior college programs pop up is really good. I know in California, because I know California really well, a lot of those programs will also allow, if you're at the adjoining junior college, you can play on the B side and practice with a collegiate team. So you can go to Cuesta College and practice and play with Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, right? And then after 2 years, you would transfer in, and you're already set to play with them. So I think if there's more programs like that, or in your area, if you're aware of those things, those are all really great opportunities to share with your players as well. So, that we don't lose them, right? Like, we want to give them, hey, like, if maybe that's not your path, here's another way we can go about it. And that's a huge part of my job, right? Is like, yes, that there's like the kind of quote typical way. Yeah, so some other kids might go around and might be a little more bendy their road, but they all get to the same place. And I have faith in that, right? I 100% tell every student, there's a place for you. So we just need to find what that is.
Wow.
Thank you. That was a fabulous answer.
That blows my mind. Incredible. I think only recently have we started talking about the non-traditional students not going to a 4-year college. Some of them are best served by going to the trade schools, and knowing that you're sensitive to that just blows my mind. All right, folks. I think we're getting to the end of this. Unless there's, yeah, that was the last question. You know what? Let's go ahead and just jump into the shout outs, last thoughts. It doesn't have to be rugby
Hold on a
related.
second, Daniel.
Yeah.
Hey, Daniel, why don't we let Karen go and meet her commitments, and we can keep talking for a little while and give some news and shout outs.
Oh, I'd love
Does
that,
that
because
sound good?
I want to keep talking about this so much. All right, Karen, thank you so much for joining us and helping us understand just how much is out there. This just absolutely has blown my mind, folks. Any last things you want to say to Karen? Because this was just amazing. Just absolutely love you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's been great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, and,
Thanks,
and, and
Karen.
last, see, I always have to have the last word. Last thing, if you're just starting out in the process, you go to my website, and I'll put the link in the show notes. But if you go to my website, click resources, I have something called a playbook. So that's a guidebook that walks you through the entire thing. It lists all the programs that are varsity. It lists all of my favorite programs for certain majors. I think it's the quickest way to get started. So I'll put that in there. But that would be a great thing I would recommend for families to start with.
And I'll put that in the show notes. I'm actually showing that right now, and I'm sharing that through the YouTube stream. And since you brought our attention to YouTube stream, and I am in fact showing the resources slash playbook, I have one question, because I've just become such a fan, such an absolute fanboy, and I hope I don't sound and look like an utter puppy. But what I'm going to do is, I'm sharing the screen. I'm going to go to the last picture you have on your home, and I just want to ask you, so that everybody knows and everybody understands just how knowledgeable and how much you are in rugby. I have a picture right now. I'm showing you as a referee running down the line, as a touch judge, as assistant referee. Who is that gentleman that is running really fast that you're keeping up with? Who is that right now? Who is that?
So that's Perry Baker. I don't know that I'd say keeping up with. Like, that's probably for about maybe 10 meters, and then I'm pretty sure he blew me away. But yeah,
Well,
so that was at Rugby Town Sevens years. Like, but I don't think he'd made the team. That was like the USA Hawks squad that he was on. But he was amazing. It was amazing. The refereeing stuff is a whole other story we can get into. But it was a great opportunity to be there with really elite athletes.
yeah, and in case anybody has any question about who Perry Baker is, I'm just going to play the YouTube of Perry Baker's highlights of how the fact that he is just so fast that he just runs around everybody, literally just runs around everybody. Okay, sorry. I just wanted to make sure that people understood that this is for real, and it's just fantastic to see you refereeing, touch judging. Again, with the likes of Perry Baker. Karen, absolutely so pleased to have had you. This is amazing. You've enriched me. I've learned a lot, and you've invigorated how it is that I do what I do. And instead of thinking I have to do more things, and oh my goodness, this is more of a chore to be able to be a better coach. You've invigorated me into thinking these are fantastic new things that I want to do. So it makes a difference in young people's lives. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, thank you.
All
Thanks.
right, folks. So Chris, what is everybody thinking? Do we want to just sit here and talk more about what just happened to us, or do we want to go through the shout outs and call it a show after the shout outs? So what do people think?
No, no, Daniel, I'm thinking, we still have Jess here, and Jess can give us a little bit, additional information
Yeah.
about her experience. I think Kate might have some ideas. I might just go, I might go. I posted a couple questions earlier that I already have actually answers to. Just would have been, might have been better for Karen to answer them. But there just might be some other ideas that we might want to talk about. But it also may be good to check in to say like, hey, how much time do folks have? But I think that the big one is that we do have another, a guest host here, Jess, and it'd be great to hear from her.
Absolutely. So, Chris, what are the questions, guys? What do we have for Jess and Jess in
Well,
general, and then Jess as it ties into Rugger's Edge and the path and opportunities that sort of helped her identify. Chris, you wanna head us off with that?
What? I don't know that I do, but I mean, I'll give it a shot. I'll give it. I mean, I tried a little bit earlier, like just like when did you? So I could start. Let me start at the beginning, right? I actually personally, Jess, I'm interested in your experience at Lindenwood, but it doesn't actually go along with the show. Maybe we need to talk about that a different time. But on
Sure.
the other hand, but since the show is about Karen and Rugger's Edge and identifying pathways, like it might be interesting even just to say, starting off first, how when did you reach out to Karen? Like when did you know, or when did you think to start the process with Karen?
Well, I think I originally found out about her is that I went to, I think it was at the Polar Bear Rugby Camp at Bowdoin College up in Maine. I was doing that probably the summer between sophomore and junior year, and then she did it like a webinar for that camp. And I think that's really when I thought about it. And they gave out her information, and then my parents had no idea how recruitment worked. We'd never done this before in the family. This was the first time, so we didn't know what direction we needed to go in and how soon things needed to happen. But we ended up reaching out to her. She's awesome to work with. I can't express that enough. But I think it really started quite general, and then we got really specific.
Jess, I just put this in the chat too, but
Yeah.
one thing you mentioned the polar bear rugby, which I know you did a couple of times, but maybe
Yeah.
you could talk about some of the ways, because New England rugby is very isolated in terms of the whole country. And I know that there are ways that you sought to kind of connect with other programs and get yourself in front of coaches. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I tried to kind of delve into a variety of programs, but like Polar Bear Rugby Camp, a bunch of Atavist camps that would come to Harvard and Connecticut, like Fairfield, that were pretty local and easy to get to. Even Karen suggested that I try out the ARPTC, which I went to and played for, which was great. But there are things like the Northeast Academy and the high school division for that, which is a great opportunity for youth players. Kind of get that upper level outside of high school as well. But playing for these types of programs could take you to certain tournaments where college teams will be competing at, so coaches can kind of seek you out there as well. That's how Coach Billy found, like, he got to look at me a little closer when I went to the New York tournament with the Northeast Academy. But yeah, like a lot of these programs kind of advertise themselves. I think the main one is probably Atavist and Northeast Academy around right now.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I'll say about that, I mean that happens to be where you're talking about, Jess, is where Skylar's my kid happens to be right now, and
Yeah.
all I have to like I can tie it all together. It's all on Karen's website, right? Wherever the camps are,
Yeah.
if you wanna go to a camp at a certain college you're interested in, or if you want to go to sort of a camp that's not associated with it, on Karen's website, she has the best list of camps, national, international, the ones that are in your state. And then she also has a list of tournaments too, which again, there's not a lot of tournaments out here, but you might be able to identify some tournaments that you can go in and play as a guest player if you have those abilities. So again, I mean that's like Karen's like got her finger on the pulse of that, because Rigor's Edge is like favorited, bookmarked on my web browser, but it's because of those, to keep up with those camps and seeing what's available locally, and that's a really, really great resource. The ones you talked about are on her lists.
Mm-hmm.
Jess, when you had conversations with Karen, and I'm sure your parents were on some of those conversations too, like what did you find helpful about working with Rigor's Edge? What kind of insight did they provide you?
I think the main helpful thing is that she kind of gave us a guideline, or like a direction that she was helping point my family in, or to help us realize what was most important for us and for me. She told us where to start, and that can be pretty hard because it's a very wide world in terms of college rugby and starting so young. But like, in terms of what would be helpful financially, what would be helpful, what does each division mean, but look at each college. She knows the college programs pretty personally, so she would help us explain that and figure out what the best fit for me was. But she helped us realize what was important at first for a family that had no clue how to figure it out in the first place.
Amazing.
And did you take all of your visits, Jess?
I went to most of them, like recruitment visits. And I think that's a pretty big deciding factor for me, was actually getting to experience the team camaraderie and the people, and just what being on the campus feels like and what that experience was. Because I think that helped me choose Lindenwood over some big other universities that I was heavily considering too at the time. Like, taking the visits is really important if you can.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
The introduction in and of itself is, must be such a door opener.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So actually, Jess, just while we're on it, it's a little bit off topic, but
Yeah.
would you say that Lindenwood is passing the broken leg test?
Yeah, actually, funny to mention that, but my freshman year, my very first collegiate game, I dislocated my shoulder, and I had to go through surgery and a 6-month rehab.
Oh,
Bummer.
Oh man.
Yeah, but that was a pretty big deal, and it got me obviously I stayed throughout the rest of the year, but it made me love the behind the scenes. It made me love the academics. It made me love the team for the inside out part. Like, it helped me make relationships and realize that I wanted to stay, and it made me excited to come back in full force when I could get there.
That's awesome.
There is no better endorsement. You were at the right place at the right school to as a whole individual, be able to fulfill you in every aspect. This is
Yeah,
blowing my mind. This is absolutely amazing. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, it
that's
absolutely.
fine.
Chris, great question. Does it pass the I'm sorry you had that injury, but that is
Yeah, that's
just
kind of crazy. Like,
that's
you really need
amazing.
to choose the school that you want to stay at and you're excited to come back to play for.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, Lindenwood is interesting. It seems like it has the biggest roster in college rugby. Like,
Definitely.
what are the players, like? Let's just say there's, I don't know, 300 kids on the roster. I don't know, 60 kids, or
There's
45
yeah.
on the roster. How do all of them get playing time? Do you have B-side games that we don't know about? Are you playing inter-squad scrimmaging each other? How does that
Yep.
work?
Kind of all of the above. We do have a varsity and JV side, so we have an A and B. So roughly every single player does get playing time, just whether you're on which roster. It can vary, but or sometimes it depends on the match really or our opponent, but there will be inter-squad matches, there will be strictly varsity matches, there will be strictly JV matches, but yeah, it's about 30 per side.
Gotcha. Hey, there's I wanna switch back a little bit to just following up on Karen and some questions we didn't get to. She actually made a great point. Most of the things that I was, that I had prepared to talk about, she's answered already in webinars that are available on our website. So again, like her website's pretty well organized. There's a section called resources and seminars, webinars. There's a ton of YouTube videos that you can look at to get answers to some of the questions about what scholarship opportunities are available to students. She goes into great detail about how it's like a full package of financial aid plus merit-based scholarships plus maybe certain schools do have a kitty or or different size funds depending on what your school is for scholarships for the university. I think Karen's the best person to explain it, and she's done it on webinars, and I think she probably did pretty well to say, hey, we've got she's covered a lot of these things in webinars in the past, and so those are all there for us. One more note that I think I wanted I brought it up in the chat earlier, but one of the things that I thought was really strange, just getting into the college scene and that for my kids and to see what opportunities are out there, and I was really surprised to see that certain college coaches would treat my kids like kryptonite. Right? They were like, they wouldn't go near them, they wouldn't look at them, they wouldn't talk to them. Really, like at least that's the way that it would appear to me. And so other college coaches maybe would talk to the kids, and I couldn't figure out what it was. But I found out over time that NCAA college recruiting restrictions are really strict, and so for the NCAA programs, the colleges have certain rules about what they can say to students. They can talk to you, they just can't be recruiting you, so they can have a cordial conversation with you but not recruit you. And that was pretty interesting. But I think if there are other people listening to this call, or if you're talking to kids who are interested in playing playing rugby in college, you might find that the restrictions on NCAA recruiting are really strict, and you might find yourself in a situation where you can't talk to coaches or they can't talk to you, and they tell you you got to wait until a window opens in a certain year, and that was really eye-opening for me. But not every university is like that. Jess, did you find at Lindenwood, like, what is Lindenwood's like approach to recruiting and discussions? They seem to be like sort of in the middle of those two.
Yeah, so Lindenwood rugby is not NCAA. We are a varsity club. But so I don't know if the rules and regulations are strict or what the policies are exactly. But I started talking to Billy Nicholas, I think my junior year, so I don't know if the rules applied then. But I don't know if I'd exactly know. But
yeah. They're not allowed to talk to any student who is younger than a junior. So if they're a sophomore, an NCAA coach can't talk to them.
Yeah, so I assume they follow similar protocol.
And like I said, the reason I bring it up is like it's relevant to this conversation. In case you're getting into these conversations, you can talk to Karen and you can start preparing. And Karen is, recommending that the earlier you prepare yourself, especially academically, that's been her clear and consistent message, is that preparing yourself academically is the most important thing you can do to maximize your potential and ensure that as many doors are possibly open to you as possible. But what I was just saying is, like, it was an observation that I had as we're sort of starting into this process, which was really, like, shocking at first, and now it's completely explainable. So I think it's probably important for ourselves, our coaches, our audience to know that that the college recruiting world is sometimes pretty serious, and there's just some unusual behaviors that are totally explainable if you understand the college recruiting process and what windows are open at what times. In particular of note is your junior year is when the first time that anybody can reach out and talk to you.
Hey,
Yeah,
one thing I wanted to ask Jess, because I know Lindenwood has also a very competitive men's program. So boys programs can be looking into sending their players to Lindenwood as well. There are scholarship opportunities potentially there, but when you're at a program that offers things like funding to go to school, like what is the time commitment involved? So if a student says, I want to play the best rugby that I can, what does that functionally mean day to day? Like how much time are they spending doing this?
Ooh,
Yeah,
great question.
It'll vary per division, but if you're looking to play for D1, D1 Elite, you're looking at probably 20 to 30 hours a week of maybe not necessarily all that time training, but commitment to the team. Yeah. So time.
So that's like a job. That's like
yes, it's a full. You could consider it as a full-time job. So time management as a student is definitely your best friend.
Okay.
I think I was committed to my team that long too, but I don't think we were doing the same things you were, Jeff.
Yeah, you know what, Chris? I
A
love
little
that
bit more social.
Yeah, Matt, I'm looking
Chris,
at
yeah.
you. Yeah, Matt, I'm looking at you, and Chris, I'm loving what you're saying because I think I put at least that, if not more, at the detriment of my grades. So yeah. I think I definitely put about as much, but it was more on the social side. And I have friendships, and Jess, you probably will also. I have friendships to this day that I can call upon to help me hide the bodies because of the time that was spent doing exactly that. They're my brothers, and my sisters. Actually, we had a women's side also. So that is time very well spent, both on building yourself up, and then also in the relationships, in the friendships that you will have, that you will carry for the rest of your life.
Yeah, of course.
Great question, Chris. Great question.
Kate asked a great question.
Sorry, Kate. Yeah, that's right, Kate. Kate.
Don't worry. Yeah,
all
we know.
credit to Kate. All credit to Kate. Kate.
She's on point.
Yep,
She's on point.
Absolutely. Sorry, apologize. Credit, Kate.
Yeah.
That was you.
All right. I'm running out of questions and maybe a little bit of gas, but so I'm gonna quiet down here and let you all go. Let anybody else who wants to do some talking.
How relieved, Jess, were your parents?
When I got into college?
Not just when you got into college, but I'm dreading having to go through the entire process of helping my kids go through college, get into a college, I should say. And they're 9 and 11, and I'm already dreading it. So, I can only imagine how relieved they were. And I mean, I don't know whether you had insight into that, but did it seem like it was just a weight off their shoulders?
I would assume so, because again, they've never had a child go through this before, so it's nerve-wracking all the way around. But
you do have older siblings, so they had gone through the college process.
Yeah, I have a sister who's 29 right now, but did not apply for athletics.
Yeah.
So they had a very different experience with my sister than they did with me. But I think once you see, you can see it reflected through your child, or how happy they are, then they'll be just as relieved.
So, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask you, Jess. So what year are you in now?
I'm a rising junior.
You're a rising junior. All right. Have you put any thought into your rugby career outside of when you get out of college?
Yeah, I have. It's kind of funny that sometimes you play what you had always wanted to be at, what level, but then you realize that this is a lot. This is pretty intense, and I'll be honest, I don't know how long my body really has after this, but I'm definitely planning on doing it afterwards. I just don't know what level I'm really looking for yet.
I'll tell you, your body has more than you think.
Yeah,
I've
definitely.
retired from rugby. I've retired from rugby 3 times, and I still plan on playing this fall. So
Yeah, it's like, but I'm planning on going to
It's a
graduate school, but so we have to
yeah, I
kind
mean,
of pick that round.
Karen comes into this with the right attitude, you know, with the you know, this she addressed all of all of the athletes as students, so she's thinking of the really well-rounded thing because rugby is it's the long game, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you're always said. I mean, when you're on the high performance path, you're on it, but you can always dial it back. There's always opportunities to play at whatever level competitively or just socially you want to. So, and that makes us, and does make us different than everything else. So, um, whatever happens is all good. I was wondering if you had any particular idea.
I think I'd like to stay home, but we'll see. Back in
Yeah,
Boston.
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because we've had entire shows about what happens where players disappear. They disappear after high school. They disappear after college. So it'll be very interesting to reach out to you in the future and find out if you stayed in rugby and what were the things that made you stay in rugby. We heard from Pot Roast. We heard from other people what it is that made them not only stay in rugby but stay in rugby and continue to pursue rugby at the highest level. Um,
Yeah.
and it seemed every single time the common denominator is that there was somebody at that higher level reaching down and saying, "Hey, come out to the practices, come out to the workouts, come check out this club." There was somebody there that was reaching out and saying, "Here, we got a spot for you." Um,
Mhm.
and otherwise, there's just a lot of people that disappear out of rugby at every single one of these stages, and that is just such a pity, particularly if you've put so much effort, so much time into this craft, into something that you feel really passionate about. And to, what Matt said, yeah, you're going to retire out of rugby like 5 times. Yeah, we've all done it. We've all walked away thinking, "Oh, that's it. I'm not coming back." In fact, that'd be a really interesting, podcast. And hey, how many times have you retired out of rugby? And how silly do you feel about the first time you said, "That's it. I'm hanging up my cleats."
what a huge mistake that first one was. Oh, God.
Oh yeah.
Well, but in a different way, there's also an interesting conversation to be had about keeping people in the game in different capacities. Because
Yeah.
Jess last summer was playing sevens for Boston Women's, but also wound up, like I asked her to come out and coach the U19 team for sevens.
Ooh.
And she was like, yeah, of course. Like, could you see yourself coaching or reffing beyond this, Jess?
Oh, definitely. I think I'd love to coach, but I'm gonna push my playing career a little
Well,
longer.
yeah.
Oh,
As you should.
The
absolutely.
need
As long as possible.
coaching and officiating is just unreal. The need for more coaches, more high caliber coaches, more young coaches, and in refs as well. It's just unbelievable how needed it is.
Absolutely, and we're gonna have a podcast on that. Like we're gonna have an entire series on that, Matt. So love to have you here for that because that I think is gonna be super eye opening and just a lot of fun. All right, do we have any more questions for Jess or even Kate? I mean, Kate helped push Jess forward on all this. So any questions on this, or are we wrapping it up?
Not for me. I know nothing. I still ask Jess to come talk to my players. So I have nothing to add.
I don't just use my brains, but I borrow. I love that. All right, guys. Any more, folks? Any more questions for Jess, or are we ready to do the shout outs?
Happy for some shout outs.
All right. It looks like we're gonna do some shout outs. So Skylar, I'm wondering if you're around. We're gonna do order of Discord, but from the bottom up. So Skylar, if you're around, and if you have a question, sorry, if you have a shout out, a mention, last things, last words, what do you got for us, kid?
Do actually, and Gear, everyone's picked up on this by now, but my shout-outs always tend to be things in the professional rugby world. So the Hurricanes for ending the Crusaders' 4-year unbeaten home run this weekend.
Wow, I'm gonna have to watch that one.
Nice.
The Super Rugby this past month has been outstanding.
So
You
good.
should subscribe to ESPN Plus if you haven't. It is so worth it.
So
It's
good.
been so good. Yep. I mean, it seems like every game comes down to the wire.
I think the last 4 games have all been decided within a try.
So good. Shaggy, what do you got for us, buddy?
Oh, okay, just a shout out to Boston Touch Rugby. They just started training up in Cambridge. So I plan on going to go check them out and maybe have a run with them next Sunday. So if any adults want to go out and get some fitness in, come on up. I know they're struggling with numbers there. I think it's a free program. And also shout outs to the Free Jacks and their academy program, which is the camp's been going on. Daryl's been killing it over there. It just looks like such an awesome time. Right in honestly my backyard in Weymouth. It's just unbelievable that they're continuing and bringing such a high level of rugby for the youth right in this area. So that's what I got.
Yeah, and
Good stuff.
Daryl somehow has weaseled himself into it. I love it. This is crazy. All right, Shaggy. So Matt, what do you got for us? Matt from Marshfield.
I think probably my shout out would probably be South Shore Anchors just announced a new head coach, tag leader, former Linwood College graduate. He's also the fly half for the Free Jacks. So that's pretty exciting. They're hoping to do a lot of clinics with him this fall. So it's a good opportunity for young players to get exposure to some high caliber players.
So good.
Yeah. It's a big pickup.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. Hey, Kate, what do you got for us?
Yeah, my shout out is actually to you, Daniel. All day it was like a will they, won't they kind of conversation about tonight's podcast. So very appreciative of you getting out of your meeting and rushing home to run this. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
You're here.
Appreciate that. Jess, what do you got for us, kid?
I wasn't prepared, but I just want to say thank you for allowing me to join the call and to pick my brain apart. And it was nice to hear Karen go through what her company does, and it was nice to see that she's still continuing to impact kids the way she did with me.
Awesome.
Daryl, buddy, what do you got, buddy?
Okay, this is Daryl the Weasel. The Weasel. Weaseled my way onto the Free Jacks thing. Yeah, I kind of did. So, but no, the new approach to it, academy systems, which is what the Free Jacks are working on, is great, and they are open to any and all ideas. But I think their approach to how academies work is going to be incredible to watch and see as it grows. So it was a great honor for me to be able to do one more week and down in Weymouth, and it's been awesome. Prior to this podcast, I was on a meeting with USA Rugby's youth in high school, and it was a Zoom call, and there's about 70 people that are on this working committee all over the country working on and trying to redevelop and redesign what youth in high school will look like, because USA Rugby has kind of put them youth in high school on an island all by itself. And so I was on a call with like 70 people, and it's really pretty incredible, and everyone is working really, really hard. And hopefully Bill and Dave will be able to share with you what they talked about as far as like the new fee structure, the due structure, as they get it all worked out. But people are working really, really hard to come up with something that everyone's going to be proud of. So a shout out to those people as well.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to cheat. I'm going to do 2 shout-outs. One is for Daryl. One to Daryl for weaseling into some really cool stuff, buddy. That I want to hear all about it at some point. And the other shout out is just gonna be to the podcast and the folks that just pile in, they dog pile into this. We have some new folks. Matt, you joined us. We have some new like guests slash co-hosts, community members. Jess, we had just blew my mind what I heard from Karen. This has just been such an exciting, fun thing, and it's just invigorating me every single day. Under the just very trying conditions that we're having right now. I usually do shout outs to, first responders and this and that, the sriracha sauce people that managed to keep going, even though that there was an embargo against them. But this time it's really just to this community. You guys are fantastic. People joined in. People quietly, when they need to go to bed, left. And the podcast, kept going. So shout out is to this community. This is just so much fun, and it's given me an hour and a half of just my mind being blown. So you guys are absolutely amazing. Chris, what do you got for us?
So much, Daniel. I don't even know. We might go. You might just, maybe get your popcorn ready. I got a lot to say. One is that I echo what Kate said. Thanks for coming in. And I know we're on a different night, and I know it was difficult, but thanks for making this happening yet again. The man and the legend behind it all. And by the way, being the number one fanboy of all fanboys of all time. I mean, your accolades for Karen were
Mind is
over.
blown.
My mind was blown at how blown your mind was today.
Daniel's mind has been blown.
Yeah. So that's awesome. But really, really, thank you for the energy you bring and what you're doing for this podcast. Next is I almost forgot some of the other things I want to talk about. But I got a bone to pick with the Free Jacks. One, I am really thrilled that they're making this academy work. It's terrible, that they were stuck in the middle of COVID, and so it hasn't worked. Maybe we haven't been able to maximize attendance. I appreciate that people are, out there. That are being careful, right, and being as careful as we can be during this time, and there are some risks that folks are taking to be out there. I appreciate all those that are taking precautions and sort of pushing the envelope, and while also understanding that this is a difficult time to be going through here. But so I'm really happy that the Free Jacks have been able to pull this off safely so far, and we have to maintain our vigilance and when it comes to being safe during the COVID while we're we're getting back to sports. But the other one is that the Free Jacks started a podcast, a really good podcast from the sound of it, and they actually hired a new coach from New Zealand this week as well. But do you know what their podcast is called, Daniel? Pathways.
Pathways.
Come on,
guys.
stole it from us.
Are they seriously? Have you heard? And not only that, but some of the other path. Oh God, we're on air. This is being recorded. So guys, yes, I love the fact that a good idea continues to spawn other good ideas. I love the concept of stone soup, and I love the fact that whether they listen to this or not, or maybe it's just the right time. But
Yeah.
I commend them. I think it's fantastic, and I've talked myself into a corner, and I'm going to shut up now and basically just say that I love that they're doing it, and I love that they're doing it. That I'm shutting up. Chris,
Yeah,
save me.
right.
Please pick
Yeah,
up
well
because
said.
I'm shutting up.
Well said.
I'm gonna put it on
Accidental.
record that I'm gonna fight the Free Jacks. I'm gonna fight them.
All right. Oh boy, yeah. I'll pay to
Internet's
see it.
forever. Internet's forever.
I'll pay to see it. Oh yeah, brilliant. Actually, yeah. So I actually feel like I did the same thing, trying to actually juxtapose one the appreciation I have that we're doing something. The Free Jacks are trying to develop youth rugby in the community, with meanwhile saying like, hey, we have to be careful during COVID, right? And they're doing a good job of being careful. And so I actually had a hard time doing that as well, Daniel.
Yeah.
But Pathways, good on them. Well said, actually. Well said. A good idea. They can have it.
Take it. Absolutely. Take it as far as they can. I love it. Fantastic. All right,
All
Chris, you
right.
done?
Oh, probably not. But let's go. Let's get to Alan. We'll be here all night.
I was going to say that there's only about a couple of billion people left. Chris, keep going. You got most of the planet covered for us. No, I did want to echo that. I know everyone's talks about rugby, but on the non-rugby front, but leading to rugby, I want to thank the people of Massachusetts for keeping their heads. So many people have lost theirs recently, it seems, and COVID's getting out of hand everywhere. But we seem to be just holding on and doing the right things, and huge kudos to my neighbors as a consequence, statewide neighbors, I should say.
Fantastic.
I know.
All right, we ran this show pretty long, but we've had other that were significantly longer. So maybe people will actually be able to listen to it on just one car ride if you're driving into work, perhaps in one bathroom visit. Oh my God, I hope you have enough TP for that. So thank you all very, very, very much for listening to this, and we will be back next week with another topic and some more fun banter for everybody to listen to. So